Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. Anne-Marie Green will join me shortly. U.S. Special Operations Forces will soon be on the ground in Syria. A small number of troops will work closely with local ground forces in the fight against ISIS. Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett is at the White House. Major, first of all, break down the specifics. How many troops are we talking about?
Elaine, the numbers are small, but the implications are very large. Less than 50 is what senior administration officials tell us of Special Operation Forces in Syria, the mission to train and assist local forces. But what does that mean? Who are the local forces? What is their mission? How close will they get to actual combat operations in a place called Raqqa in northern Syria, which is the focus of coalition efforts in Syria to dislodge ISIL forces there and to break up their stranglehold on that particular part of northern Syria. There's a lot to unpack here, Elaine, so I'm going to just sort of lay out some of the general specifics, and we can have lots of questions, and I'll try to answer them as best we can. The Syria aspect of this is enormously large because President Obama has been reluctant every single day of the coalition operations against ISIS to put U.S. combat forces in Syria. Even though these numbers are small, special operators are the best trained combat forces the United States government can deploy and is now deploying into Syria. Though the number, as I said, is not large, the implications are very large because this puts U.S. ground forces in potential combat operations in northern Syria, and that puts them possibly in confrontation with ISIS forces, possibly in confrontation with aerial bombardment from the Russians, which have stepped up their aerial operations throughout Syria. Most of that has benefited ISIS, not helped out the coalition trying to defeat ISIS. And it also puts the United States in a very rough position diplomatically with Turkey to the north, because it is quite likely that these U.S. special operators will be working with Kurdish-aligned forces in northern Syria. The Turks do not like the Kurds operating there, even though the United States, as part of this announcement, is going to put more U.S. military aircraft at Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. All of these dimensions are very complicated, both militarily. The last point, the timing of this is significant in the context of ongoing negotiations in Vienna to try to create a political transition to oust the Assad regime from Syria. The Iranians, for the first time, are participating in those conversations. President Obama coordinated this announcement of U.S. special operators going into Syria with the Turks, with the Saudi Arabia, with UAE, and with Qatar. So there are many, many aspects of this chessboard in Syria. But the most important element is, after months and months, possibly years of reluctance to put special operators in Syria in what is likely to be a combat mission, eventually the president has decided to do so.
So, Major, so much to talk about here. Given what you just said about the proximity to combat for these U.S. forces, how then does this square with what the president has said in the past and his stated policy when it comes to American boots on the ground in Syria?
There's always been a tremendous dimension of fiction to this no boots on the ground phraseology from the administration. There are more than 3,000 U.S. military personnel in Iraq right now. They all wear boots. They're all on the ground. There has been a military focus to those operations. The distinction the administration draws is that they are not involved in regular, deployed combat operations, and it's not on a massive scale. Okay, fine. That is technically true, but it doesn't mean there isn't peril, and it doesn't mean that there is not a direct potential of military conflict, as we have seen in several raids in Iraq and Syria already. And the fact that special operators are now going to be near Raqqa indicates the president is now ready to put those U.S. special operators closer to the battle space, in more risk, at risk of more danger, and enlarging U.S. military operations in Syria, which he's been reluctant to do. One thing that Defense Secretary Ash Carter said before Congress this week is there is a 3 R's strategy the administration now has: Raqqa, Ramadi, and raids. Raqqa is in northern Syria. Ramadi is in Iraq. Both now are places where coalition forces are trying to dislodge ISIL forces in control of both. And how they want to do that? That's where the 3rd R comes in, using raids. Raids where in Syria it'll be local forces, but now they're going to have U.S. special operators assisting them. In Iraq, it's Iraqi forces and Kurdish forces, also with U.S. military assisting, providing perhaps ground logistics, perhaps being so close to the battle space that they can call in airstrikes that'll be more effective. All of this falls under the category of what many on the outside of the Pentagon and this White House call mission creep, though the White House tries to suggest it's all within the confines of the originally articulated mission the president presented to the country more than a year ago.
On that point, Major, of mission creep, has there been any indication from the administration how long they believe that these special forces will be needed on the ground in Syria, and also the possibility of more troops being sent?
The length of time is completely open-ended, and the probability is that if you put some special operators in and they achieve success, what will the military commanders ask for? More special operators to achieve more success. If there are setbacks, the U.S. military commanders are likely to say, well, we didn't have enough people, so we need more people. In either case, the actual decision, that's why it's a weighty one indeed, to put U.S. special operators in Syria does suggest, or at least opens up the possibility of expanding the military footprint for the United States in Syria, and for unknown periods of time and to unknown numbers in the future.
All right, Major Garrett standing in the White House briefing room, where very shortly, in about 20 minutes or so, we expect a scheduled briefing by White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest. And Major, I know you'll have plenty of questions. We'll be sure to cover that here on CBSN. Major Garrett, thank you so much.
You got it.